Well, thank you, everyone, and you're very welcome to this course. I must say that it's exciting to have you here, and thank you, Dr. Abiy, for that introduction to the course. So I'm just gonna the essence of this first class is essentially to help you to talk about a couple of basic concepts and principles. So these concepts are important because irrespective of how sophisticated the statistical analysis that you're doing is, it all builds on a solid conceptual understanding. It all builds on getting your concepts very accurate. Because there's a lot of work that you see out there sometimes that, it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of very highly sophisticated stuff, but at the end of the day, because attention's not been paid to very basic fundamental concepts, a lot of the jargons just don't make any real meaning, just don't add any real knowledge. And I'm going to say this, there's a wide variety of people who engage in statistical analysis or who consume statistical outputs. There are people who, understand programming. They can write codes in R or they can use SPSS, but they've not taken the time to understand the fundamental concepts of statistical analysis or statistical theory. And so a lot of times you see people running regression models without even caring about whether the kind of variables they work, whether it's appropriate for the kind of analysis you're doing or the kind of variables they're working on. And then you have other people who have some kind of understanding of, some kind of algorithmic understanding of statistical analysis. Say, okay, if you want to do statistical analysis, if there are two variables, okay, you use this kind of test. If there are three variables, you use this kind of test. That's a good place to start from, but it's just not sufficient, because a lot of times for a statistical analysis to be valid, you need more than just picking a test from the shelf. No, you need to understand your kind of data, understand the kind of question you want to answer, and understand the kind of method you want to use, and know that all the three of them match together for you to be able to draw the kind of inferences that you're drawing from this data. And those are the pitfalls that you see in a lot of sometimes published studies, sometimes claims on social media or in the public space. So the essence of this course is to ensure that at least we get the fundamental concepts, the basic issues right, and we can build on that subsequently, maybe in subsequent courses or in our own self-reading, to become very competent critical consumers of statistical literature. Having said that, I'm going to move to what we want to do in this in this particular class, and that we want to talk primarily about measures of central tendency and some basic concepts that are related to that. And then we'll talk about tabular and graphical display of data. And so why do we talk about measures of central tendency? Or why do we talk about tabular and graphical display of data? I think one way to start that is to ask a question, and I'm going to need answers from the class. Are babies taller in Nairobi than in Dar es Salaam? Those are the kind of questions most of the time when we're trying to apply statistical methods in clinical medicine and public health. Those are the kind of questions we're trying to answer. Essentially,
and then we'll also look a bit about tabular and graphical display of data. Like a lot of times people have this pie charts, all sorts of graphs in their papers, and sometimes they are not used appropriately or in ways that are meaningful, right? And that's important to sort of understand, like what's the right way to be presenting data and how, right? So why are measures of central tendency important? And the question that Dr. Montoya was asking before he got disconnected was whether babies weigh the same in Dar es Salaam versus in Nairobi. I think that's the question. So the reason why we often want to understand measures in a group, right? We want a meaningful way to summarize data, group level data. And very often the thing that first comes to mind is the average, right? This is something that we are all very familiar with. It's taught to us from like elementary school, right? So we will not spend too much time talking about the average. The reason why averages are important to understand and to use is because it gives us a very simple way to present that information. So how tall are men in Ibadan, right? On average, men are 5 feet 8 inches tall, and you can tell that the person who made this slide has been living too long in America, rather than using the metric system. So essentially, this is one set of this is one metric that you can use to summarize, and the mean is not the only. So there's the average, which is the mean, and it's not the only average that we are often like using. So we'll also talk about what other averages are there that are commonly used, and much of which you already likely have familiarity with. Now, before we talk about that, right, we also want you to think about what kinds of